Greetings, this is Top Hat and Buttered Popcorn. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and today we'll consider a recent film, 12 Monkeys. This film was produced by Charles Roven, directed by Terry Gilliam. Photography was Roger Pratt, and the music Paul Buckmaster. This film stars Bruce Willis as James Cole, Brad Pitt as Jeffrey Goins Jr., Madeline Stowe as a Dr. Rayleigh, and the character Christopher Plummer played Dr. Goins. Now, it might be said as an aside that Goins is a Scott name, although the character played by Christopher Plummer is an American Southerner, a eminent microbiologist. This particular person was of Scott descent. And this called to mind, for me, the rather large number of really brilliant and innovative scientists and men of letters who have issued from these people. And I think one can truly say that the ever-living has blessed humanity through these people, his people of Scott. Now, the story has a premise, which is that terrorists released a deadly virus on the earth in the period of 1996-1997, which resulted in the death of 5 billion people. 1% of the population survived into the 21st century in an underground culture. The storyline of this particular film is basically that a prisoner is promised a pardon. This is a 21st century prisoner who is promised a pardon if he would go back in time and retrieve a specimen of the pure virus prior to its release. There are presently no pure strains left in the 21st century because of mutations, and apparently a vaccine cannot be made without the original pure strain. This conceit seems a little fraudulent to me, but that's the basic idea. Now, there is a caveat, and that is that the person who goes back can in no way alter the fate of the 5 billion. They will, in fact, perish. And the only mission he has is to retrieve that pure strain. And since Terry Gilliam is the director, one can't help but associate this film now and then, here and there, with his Time Bandits. There is a kind of a slapstick element that runs through this particular film as the people who run this show in the 21st century, a kind of tribunal composed of, as I made it, 5 men and 1 woman, or possibly 4 men and 1 woman, apparently of a scientific background. But at any rate, they are not precise in sending people back. Also, the film quickly gets into the opening of the loop, which would also be the ending, of course. And this is a scene in an airport, as it turns out, a kind of a different film quality here. We have almost an old Technicolor type quality to the film. And the film depicts a lad about 10 years old, a woman with blonde hair, a man with a mustache, a hat, and long hair, and tourist clothes, and a rather nasty individual, red-haired, ponytailed, passing through, as the sort of featured faces in this milieu of the airport. Now, this particular scene is meant to be a kind of a dream scene, and it has that quality. It is told in kind of a third-person, impersonal, but also through the eyes of this 10-year-old lad. We reckon to be about 10 years old, tow-headed youth. And we see both from the perspective of the third person impersonal and from the eyes of the lad, the man with the mustache and hat and long hair being shot in the airport. And we see the blonde-haired woman react and race to his side. He falls mortally wounded. And so we have a lad seeing a very dramatic event in an airport. As it turns out, from this there is a cut to the 21st century, which is the present in this film. But this particular initiating scene is a recurring vision or dream in the mind of the Bruce Willis character, James Cole. We meet James Cole in the 21st century environment in which he lives. He's an inmate in a subterranean culture, a culture which has been driven underground by the virus, which rules the surface of the earth, along with the beasts. And the beasts apparently have not encountered a mutation which affects them, so humans are only threatened. The inmates are in a rather dreary environment. We see rows and tiers of cages, and the whole environment or ambience seems to be that of a sort of run-down research facility. The men pace and yell and bound about in their cages much as animals do in kennels and research labs and pounds and so forth, and there is an undoubted parallel intended here. And we see a kind of a cruel setting, and we see a kind of a political criticism here in the form of man's inhumanity to man, and also parallel cruelties to animals. Subsequently, the tribunal is pleased, and he seems like just the sort of fellow to send back on this mission that they have of retrieving the pure virus prior to its release. And so they plan to send him back into 1996. He is going to apparently be pardoned if he does the mission successfully, and so he's agreeable. And I will say that throughout this particular film, Willis is an attractive, likable sort of fellow. He often seems confused and drugged. He exists in a world that he did not make, a world that is hostile to him, a world that denies him, and a world which monitors him all the way. For even in time traveling, he seems to be monitored. He also, in several points of this particular film, expresses, and sometimes exuberantly, his love of the air in the Earth of 1996, and the green grass, such simple things as the green grass and trees and streams and so forth. It kind of calls to mind the lyrics of the old song about the best things in life are free, and indeed this is the case, I believe, although this does not seem to be a position often taken by tribunals or even Congress nowadays. Now, he is suited up to go. He is sent back to 1996, but unfortunately lands in 1990. Hence, he is kind of caught in a confused situation, and in trying to express himself to the people of 1990, he only makes his position worse. He quickly is brought to the attention of the police in his talk about 1990 being the past, and that 1996 and 97 were also the past, which is entirely strange to somebody living in 1990. That 5 billion people were doomed to die of a virus that none of these people have ever heard of, and so forth. Well, it all leads the judicial authorities to think maybe this guy should have some sort of psychological evaluation, a mental evaluation. So although the police would prefer to lock him up because he, throughout this movie, gets into tussles with police and orderlies and security people and bad guys and whatnot, you know. He's a very formidable fighter in this particular film. However, in this particular case, the police do their duty and take him to a mental institution. And at this mental institution, he meets up with the Brad Pitt character, Jeffrey Goins Jr., and the Madeline Stowe character, Dr. Rayleigh, a psychiatrist, a woman of professional woman of eminence, and noted lecturer, writer of books and so forth, and something of a star in her particular area. She has a particular interest in this particular film. In her line of interest in a professional sense is in men who appeared in history, I should say people perhaps, who appeared throughout history, who claimed to have come from the future or from a different realm, and who made prophetic statements. And she called this the Cassandra syndrome. And of course, Cassandra was the daughter of King Priam of Troy, and she was doomed to be a seer who always correctly prophesies, but is never believed. Two, this interest on the part of Dr. Rayleigh, of course, recapitulates the story which is being directed by Gilliam. So it's a neat trick that he's pulling here. And he does this in a number of places, and I think he did a really neat job in this particular film, and applaud the effort, although it is a diverting film. It's not what I would call an original concept, and I've already alluded to Time Bandits and previous films of this sort, time travel. But he pulls this off very well, I think. And I'll say that all the actors, the Bruce Willis, the Brad Pitt, Madeline Stowe, and Christopher Plummer, who has a very modest role, were very effective. Now, at this time, we'll take a look at Brad Pitt. Now, he played a fellow who had some sort, a young man who had some sort of paranoid, schizophrenic type of disorder. And I would like to just make a comment in regard to this, that people who have this sort of disease often are associated with this disease, often have a sensation or a perception of hearing voices, or they seem to hear counsel from some source or other. And this counseling, or these voices, generally are destructive in their consequences. And the persons who hear these particular voices often describe them as being demonic or demons. And I just wanted to put forth the notion that this may in fact be true. and that there may be genetic weaknesses in the brain which are sort of gateways or pathways from one realm into the present, and that realm being a demonic realm, and that people who do not have that genetic weakness do not have the horrific problems that those who do have with these voices. Now, these voices this weakness seems to be able to be controlled. The door can be locked, so to speak, with certain modern drugs such as lithium carbonate. But those who do not have it are sort of doomed to have these demonic stormings through this portal, this aperture in their brain, and the destructive advice given thereby. I think that this was what the Gothic writer J.P. Lovecraft was getting at when, in his many books, in which he dealt with another world, a world of horrible demonic spirits clamoring and storming into the everyday world of the humans through apertures, portals, and so forth, gateways, usually in structures such as houses or estates, but sometimes on the grounds and caves and so forth like this. Well, but these structures, such as an estate, a house, and so forth, are really displacements for the human brain. And I think that this is basically what he was aiming at, that there was another realm or universe controlled by demonic spirits, spirits that once reigned here and they wished to reassert their power here. And but be that as it may, we do have Brad Pitt, who is certainly playing a deranged character here. He apparently has tutored himself at institutions and witnessed people who have serious mental problems so as to better present his character. And I thought it was very effective. His gestures sometimes are obscene, but at any rate, Bruce Willis, as James Cole, is given a tour of the sort of sitting room, recreation room where most of the people in his particular ward existed, and it was really sort of a clown's tour of a house of horrors. But Brad Pitt sometimes was very funny in this because of the incongruity of it all and so forth. He has an eminent father, a Dr. Goins Sr., the microbiologist, played by Christopher Plummer, and he puts forth a little bit of chatter about the people outside being nuttier than the people inside and so forth, and this is not a strange conceit. It crops up in movies from time to time. And he goes forth with a certain jabbering that from time to time has a certain logic to it. He learns that the Bruce Willis character needs to get out of there to escape. He has important reasons, the 5 billion people and so forth. He manages to get a key that is an exit from this particular asylum. And he gets the key to Willis, and he commits a lot of acts to create disturbance, a commotion, a tumult, and so forth as a diversion. And Bruce Willis, James Cole, has the opportunity to escape with the help of this key. The problem is that he'd been drugged so much with Thorazine or some such that his motion is excruciatingly slow, and he is confused and uncoordinated, and so the effort is is one of exquisite pain and distress in watching. He is trying his best, but it really does not work because of the problems created by the drugs on his body, and he is recaptured, and he's put into a kind of a solitary confinement. He is there, and then he's suddenly vanishes. The authorities in the particular institution go in there to take a look at him, and there's no one there. And they can't imagine how he could escape. And there's a little fun here in that apparently one of the lords of the institution enters a man and begins to make a very neurotic-like clicking of his lower lip. So a little fun is played on him here. There is a suggestion that maybe he would be a good inmate himself. But be that as it may, he is gone, James Cole, the Bruce Willis character. And we learn subsequently that the tribunal has yanked him back into the 21st century, and he's brought before him, and he has to sort of defend his actions. The mission that he was supposed to perform was not performed, and questions needed to be asked. And he defends himself basically by saying that he was sent to the wrong time period, 1990, and at that time there was no army of the 12 monkeys, and there was no virus and so forth, so how could he possibly perform the mission? This logic apparently swayed the tribunal, and they decide that they'll give him another chance. And they tell him this time he will definitely go to the third quarter precisely of 1996. But they send him into World War I France amidst the trench warfare of 1917, and he encounters another visitor that he knew as an inmate of the 21st century. They both are wounded. The Bruce Willis character gets a shot in the thigh, so he's in a tough position. Now the camera then shifts, the film shifts to the Madeleine Stowe character, Dr. Rayleigh, who is lecturing on her favorite theme, the Cassandra Syndrome, in a hall in Baltimore. She finishes her little lecture and sits down to sign some books that she has written on this particular matter. We have a character, kind of a red-haired individual with ponytailed, in a ponytail fashion, step forward, and sort of a furtive, intense fellow, and he makes a few sharp, extremist kinds of comments about in regard to environmental problems and humans being the source thereof. And he gets a light, humorous comment from Madeleine Stowe, Dr. Rayleigh, and she moves on to the next gent to sign his book. This particular gentleman, an older fellow, he inquires if perhaps Dr. Rayleigh is familiar with his own book. This is a very neat little scene. It's very brief, but in this particular scene, Terry Gilliam is able to flash the person who is a villain in this movie and a little bit of his mindset, and also to introduce, ever so briefly, a nice example of vanity in the academic bookwork world, the academic intellectual creative complex. Now, she finishes this and she leaves. She goes to her car and she starts it up, and suddenly she is aware that there's somebody in the back seat, a shabbily dressed man. She is frightened. He talks in a certain way that makes her understand that it is in fact James Cole, the escapee from the mental institution that she had encountered and worked with upon, however you look at it, back in 1990. Now, he tells her that he wants her to drive him to Philadelphia, and she has little choice but to do so. They start going and so forth. He expresses pain. He apparently has been living for a couple of weeks in the area on the streets. His leg is still painful from the bullet wound, and along the way, Madeline Stowe, as Dr. Rayleigh, an MD, happens to repair the wound. They stop at a motel, and she gets some equipment or other and removes the bullet. It's an old bullet, it looks old, and a rather large caliber. However, apparently the Bruce Willis character has been lucky in this particular wound, and repair will occur. Now, they keep on going toward Philadelphia, and as they get there, they run into a kind of a shabby, derelict kind of street world. There are lots of street people around. Many seem deranged or apocalyptic in their talk. The Bruce Willis, James Cole character is rather frantic to get about, and he searches and stumbles across the red insignia of the Army of the 12 Monkeys. And this excites him more, and he grabs Stowe. Now, Stowe is very upset about this deal because she is kidnapped by a person she thinks is deranged. She has, at this point, bonded just slightly with him anyway, because she basically wants to help him, but he doesn't seem to understand that he's deranged. And he's also in command of the ship, so to speak. So he's putting her in search of the headquarters, the locale of the Army of the 12 Monkeys. Well, she's having an epiphany at this point in time. Now, as it happens, this particular hotel is a trick house. They have captured or kidnapped his father, taped his mouth, and they're going to the zoo to release all the animals in the zoo. Have got to split.